My name is Nino Gonzalez, and welcome to another episode of Making Sense. And today we're going to discuss a topic that has probably been discussed several times, but it's never bad to hear about it again. It's about identity theft. And nowadays, with a lot of the computer breaches we've had, both on websites, at the federal level, even the IRS or stores, or credit card companies, I think it's an important topic to revisit again and discuss a little bit about identity theft. I know there's been several movies relating to identity theft, and sometimes they make a comedy out of it, but when it affects a person, usually it takes a lot of time to clear up that identity theft, and it's not a victimless crime. Even though you might never know who committed it, it really affects those people that had their identity stolen. So let's take a look and see what identity theft is. And as we take a look at this first slide, it explains to you a little bit that it's when somebody steals your personal information to commit fraud. There could be several types, which could be computer fraud, email fraud, wire fraud, and financial institution fraud. So all of these categorize into identity theft. Now, if we take a look at the statistics in 2015, most of this identity theft involved misusing credit cards. So that means that somebody stole your credit card or stole the information about your credit card and made charges against that. So 64.1% was regarding that. Another one was 35% of misuse of your existing bank account. So if you have a checking account, or even if you have a savings account, you do have a routing number and you do have an account number. And when somebody obtains those numbers, they could possibly go into your accounts and do fraudulent activity and misuse the funds that you have in there. Misuse of personal information, 14.2%. That is when somebody is using your name, your date of birth, and possibly your social security number to maybe obtain employment here in the U.S. or do other things with that information that you might not be aware of. The average annual number of identity theft victims, and this was a staggering number when I was researching this, was 12,157,400 people. That's quite a bit of people impacted by this crime. And the average financial loss is $5,130. Now, Texas is the fourth highest state when it comes to identity theft. And the two biggest ones were Arizona and Florida. So how is your information obtained? Well, it could be very simple in that you lose your purse or wallet, or your purse or wallet is stolen. And sometimes you can't replace the items that are in there, and you might not recover them, and people might use that information, such as your driver's license, and if you have your social security card or credit cards, to do unauthorized purchases. Now, one thing that you should never carry in your wallet is your social security card, unless you absolutely need it. For example, if you're opening up a bank account where they require where the financial institution requires for them to see a social security card, or if you're obtaining a new job where they need to verify that you're eligible to work here in the U.S. But otherwise than that, I see no point in carrying your social security card in your wallet. Another thing is stealing mail from your mailbox. I would suggest for you to have a mailbox that is secure, that is hopefully lockable and maybe within the inside of your house, so that way, in case somebody sees mail out there, they're not tempted to take it out. And also, what I don't recommend is I drive by and I see people putting with a clothespin mail that they want the mailman to pick up, and that usually includes payments to credit card companies or maybe credit card applications, and that in there might also be checks. And you don't want to do that, because that if the mailman doesn't come in a timely basis, that mail could be sitting out there for somebody to grab it. So it's real important to secure that mailbox, just simple steps like that. Another way somebody can obtain your information is to do a change of address form. How would they do that? Well, they would just go to a local post office and do a change of address, and it's not you, and what will happen is that your mail will get redirected to that individual's house, and so therefore the process of identity theft could happen. And another way that is what we call dumpster diving is they go through people's trash. And we shouldn't throw away documents that have our name, address, our date of birth, social security number, any type of credit card numbers. We should shred those. We should shred those as much as possible. If you don't have a shredder, then tear them up into little pieces. Sometimes what I suggest is those important documents, if you can tear them up into little pieces and maybe even pour a can of soda on them, so that way they get soggy and they get unreadable if you don't have access to a shredder. But we need to take care of those personal identifiable information that can be used for identity theft. So another way that information is obtained is by somebody pretending to be that they're not, such as your landlord or such as an employer, and they're trying to get information from somebody to give them personal information about you. And sometimes that's what we call phishing. With text messaging, it's called smishing. So with phishing, somebody will send you an email that you think looks legitimate, but it's not, and they're trying to obtain information from you. And the reason it's called phishing is because it's like when you go fishing, they throw out the line and they're seeing who will take the bait and see if you'll get hooked. Nowadays with cell phones, they do it with text messages. So they want you to click on a link, or they want you to do something. Sometimes that can install something onto your phone that you don't want, or redirect you to a place where you might be asked to enter some personal identifiable information. So nowadays, even with text messages, we have to be careful. If you don't know where they're coming from, just ignore them. Banks will not contact you through text, or they will not contact you through email, especially asking personal identifiable information. And another thing that we've heard in the news is hacking into either personal computers or websites that you visited. What will happen is that they'll hack into these systems and they'll grab whatever information is available. We've all heard about the IRS website being hacked, or with regards to Target, maybe, where their credit card systems were hacked into, and information was obtained about credit and debit cards. And as we saw in the stats, that's one of the greatest percentages of identity theft was misuse of credit cards. And that includes also debit cards, which falls into your misuse of bank information. So let's take a look at some of these emails. And these are emails that I've personally gotten, and I saved them just for this show, just to show you how it can lure people into revealing their personal information. So if we take a look at this email, it tells us that support team just sent us $21.25 through PayPal, and it says click here to continue. It comes from not even PayPal, it comes from somebody that I don't know at Gmail, and look at who it's even sent to. It's not even my personal email address. So they're just sending this type of information to maybe thousands, maybe millions of people to see who will catch the bait and we can reel them in. And some people will click on that button, and then it will take them to a website where maybe it might install a virus into your computer, or they're asking you personal identifiable information. So please, if you don't know where it's coming from, delete it and don't answer it. Here is another example of an email, a little bit smaller print. Let's see if we can take a look at that. But it says here that it's very urgent and important, 2.5 million ATM MasterCard payment. And supposedly this is coming from some foreign country. I just have to answer some questions, and I will be the owner of $2.5 million. Wow. So I wish it was that easy to get $2.5 million, but the easiest thing for them to do is for you to respond to this email and start answering questions, and then they steal your information. And here is another one. This one is coming from Nigeria. Your name is among the 5 beneficiaries to be compensated with a sum of $500,000. They're asking for a lot of personal identifiable information, thinking that if you answer this email, you're going to receive that large sum of money. Remember, if it's too good to be true, it probably isn't true. So please do not fall for these. And I'm sure many of us have received these emails in our inboxes, and I hope you delete them and don't even respond to them and get them out of your system. But here's another one. Greetings from IRS USA. I doubt it. The IRS is going to give me greetings like that. Plus, in addition, the IRS will not contact you through email or through phone. They usually do that through mail. Overdue contract payment, consignment trunk bucks worth $10,500,000. Later on in this email, they're asking you for personal identifiable information that you might be susceptible in giving out, believing that this is true and you're going to be the owner of those funds. So this is what we call phishing, and we also see a lot of this through text messaging. But in text messaging, usually it comes from somebody you don't know, and it asks you to click here to respond or to acknowledge that you received that text message. Please don't do it. If you don't know who it's from, please do not answer, because it could even install something into your phone and steal information from there. So how is your information obtained otherwise? Well, sometimes if you're at an ATM machine, somebody could be looking over your shoulder to see your PIN number. And that is one way they can obtain that information. So please make sure that when you're at an ATM machine, that you're in a place that is well lit up and that is secure and that nobody is behind you. And also, they can attach skimmers to an ATM machine to catch the card number and the PIN. And this is not only on ATM machines, but this has happened, for example, at gas stations when you slide in the card or anywhere you swipe your card. Sometimes it doesn't belong to the merchant. Somebody might have attached a skimmer in front of there, so that way when you slide your card, it reads a magnetic code, and then that magnetic code picks up the information from your credit card, and then they can create new credit cards from that. And many of us at restaurants, this happens a lot. They skim cards at restaurants. So what a lot of servers will do is they'll carry a little device, and before they run your credit card through the actual cash register, they'll swipe it on this little machine where it stores that magnetic information data. So we got to be especially careful at restaurants to make sure that our card is handled properly. And I've known even a lot of people who have gotten really paranoid and they don't pay with debit or credit cards at restaurants. They pay cash, or they even use prepaid cards when they go out to restaurants and entertainment venues like this. So there's steps you can go to protect yourself. Now, nowadays, especially with the rolling of October 1st, is that credit card companies are now implementing chip technology. So if you have a credit card or a debit card, you probably received a new one maybe a month ago, 2 months ago, or you might be receiving one in the mail soon. But now it's incorporating chip technology. And with that chip technology, it makes it harder to duplicate and steal that information from that card otherwise than the magnetic strip. It's still going to have the magnetic strip, but now in order for it to be effective and to be able to be used, you must have that chip. So now what's going to happen is when you go to a store and it's a chip card, you have to insert it in and you have to leave it in there for the chip to be read. And so it does take a little bit longer than just swiping that card, but I think it's worth the wait to be a little bit safer that that information will not be stolen as easily. And this comes due to a lot of the credit card information being stolen. The most major one was about a year ago with Target when they suffered they suffered the credit card breach, and especially during the Christmas season, which really hurt their Christmas sales and their revenue. Home Depot, I think, was another company that was subject to that, and several of the craft stores. So there's been a lot of stories on that where credit card information has been stolen, and that information can be used to make unauthorized purchases and to duplicate those credit cards. So now we have that new concept of the chip technology. We're going to discuss what are some of the steps that you can take if you become a victim of identity theft. How do you determine if you are a victim of identity theft? Well, one of the things that I suggest is check your credit report. And I have the address where you can get your credit report once a year for free. And it is through annualcreditreport.com. What I would suggest as a monitoring purpose is that you request a report every 4 months. In the first 4 months, request it from Experian, which is one of the credit bureaus. The next one, other 4 months, request it from TransUnion, which is another credit bureau. And then another 4 months, request it from Equifax, which is another credit bureau. And then you start the cycle all over again. And this is how you can monitor your credit report continuously on a yearly basis every 4 months to make sure that there are no discrepancies there. Now, as I mentioned, if you are a victim of identity theft, you might be entitled to free reports, and you can and make sure you dispute any accuracies immediately online or by mail. And sometimes if there's a breach of data, whoever was breached will send you a letter or an email telling you the data was breached, and to make sure that you check your credit report. And if that happens, you are entitled to an additional free one, and you don't have to wait that 1 year period, such as if you already obtained it from Experian, you can obtain another one from Experian due to the data breach. So that is available if some of that information has been compromised. But you can still go through annualcreditreport.com and access it through there as well. But if you need to dispute any of the items that are on your credit report, these are the websites that you would go to through one of those 3 credit bureaus. So we first want to keep our information safe. And we want to make sure that all the financial documents are in a safe and private place. We only want to provide information to only people that we are certain are going to use it the right way, and that it is protected. Nowadays, most institutions, most vendors that you deal with, even doctor's offices, are going to give you a privacy notice in how your personal information is used and how it's going to be destroyed or how it's going to be shared. That is by requirement. And one of the things that we need to be aware of is medical facilities, doctor's offices, because here you're sharing a lot of personal information. For example, your name, your date of birth. Sometimes they ask you for your social security number. Now, nowadays, social security numbers are not used for insurance purposes. They're still used for Medicare purposes, but not for insurance purposes. Insurance companies have now assigned you a new number, and there's no reason why they should really have your social security number. So usually when I fill out an application at a doctor's office as a new patient, I leave the social security number blank because they really don't need it to process my insurance claim if I'm paying through insurance. So also, make sure your passwords are hard to guess by using complex combination of numbers and upper lower letters, symbols, or special characters. We know that a lot of people use the password 123456. That's not a very efficient password, or sometimes they use the word password as their password. So make it a little bit more challenging for somebody who is trying to hack into your system. Make it a little bit more challenging for them to figure out that password, and don't write them down. or if you do, keep them in a safe place and change them. Change them often. Don't rest assured just because it's a complex password that you fall into the false sense of security that you don't have to change it. So as we take a look, I want to go along as what happens if you're victimized. Well, first of all, you've got to be patient. It took the identity thief probably less time to commit the crime than it is going to take you to clean it up. And it can be difficult, it can be time consuming, it can be nerve-wracking. But one of the things you have to do is you have to be organized and you have to keep an action log. So I've put a website up here and they have an excellent tool for you to use if you're a victim of identity theft. I have here, here's this website, but I'm going to click on this and it's going to take me to this action log. And if you take a look at this identity theft action log, it actually goes through everything, who you talk to, the date, the contact person, any notes with financial institutions, with credit card companies, and everything. So that way you can keep track of trying to clean up the identity theft. This could become a valuable tool if you're going to pursue it any further with law enforcement and trying to bring some sort of a closure to it. Now, also, you should report the crime and file a police report and request a copy of that police report. Keep the phone number of your investigator handy and file a complaint with the Federal Trade Commission. They do not assist in individual cases, but a lot of credit bureaus, the 3 credit bureaus, will require that you file a police report and also with the FTC so they can make a statement and you can make a statement on your credit report that you have been a victim of identity theft. So there is a complaint and affidavit on the FTC website. You can just go to ftc.gov and here is the complaint affidavit, and the average time to complete, they tell you, is 10 minutes. Probably it's going to take you a little bit longer because you need to give a lot of personal information. So it asks you about you, what happened at the time of the fraud, the declarations about the fraud, and then the documentation, information about your accounts, your checking account, and all of this. So, and your law enforcement report. That is if you filed a police report. So that is real important that you do. That is real important that you do because with the credit card companies, if there were unauthorized charges or even with your financial institution, they might require this documentation in order to take those charges off. And also credit card companies might require this documentation in case your credit was ruined or new accounts were opened under your name. So like I told you, you've got to be patient, you got to be organized. The identity thief didn't take too much time when they stole your identity, but for you, it's probably going to take longer to clean up the mess. So if you think that you've lost a credit card or you lost your wallet, your driver's license, or your data was breached, what I would suggest is you put a fraud alert on your credit report. So the fraud alert will last about 90 days and it can be renewed for another 90 days for 180 days. And no new credit should be granted without your explicit approval. If you have proof that identity theft has occurred and you have filed a police report, you may request a fraud alert be placed for 7 years. So what this will do is if anybody tries to open credit under your name, you have to be notified and you have to become aware and see if you were the one who initiated that request. And if you weren't, then you can put a stop to it there. And I would suggest fraud alerts even if your data was breached with a retailer or with your bank or with the IRS. And I would suggest that just as a safeguard, just as a precaution to do that. If I put a fraud alert with Experian, they'll automatically notify the other 2 credit bureaus. So I don't have to do each one individually. And check your credit report for accuracy every 3 months, at least for a year, and then at least annually after that. Get into the habit of monitoring your credit at least on a yearly basis. So then we can also go to another extreme. We can go to a security freeze. And a security freeze is placed on your report No creditor or other business that does not have a pre-existing relationship with you can access your files. Also, you may also write a victim's report, a brief statement describing the details of the crime, and send it to all 3 bureaus to be added to your report. Now, what is this going to do? Well, this is the next step if you really feel you've been a victim and you're trying to protect yourself. Is it going to take longer to get credit? Yes, it will, because now the potential creditors have to make sure that you're the one that's applying for credit, and also that might cut also a lot of those pre-qualified credit card offers that you might be getting in the mail. So security fees, freeze fees for placement and removing them and replacing the security fees differs by state, but only you can request that freeze, and only you can request for the freeze to be removed. Usually if you're an identity theft victim, there will be no charge, but if you just want to place a security freeze just to be careful, there might be a fee, and the fees don't range that much, usually about $10 to $20. So be careful. More than half of the victims of identity theft reported that the culprits were people they know. Co-workers, friends, employees, neighbors, and even family members. Who has better access to your personal information than people that you know? And usually, sometimes, it breaks my heart to see that a family member actually stole your identity and used your information for their own financial gain, or to obtain employment, or to obtain a credit card or a loan, because they have access to that information. So even the people that we trust, we've got to be careful with our information and make sure that it is safeguarded. So there are several things that I suggest. First of all, be careful who you give information to, and make sure how they're going to use that information and how that information will be destroyed in the event that you no longer you have any dealing of business with them. Also, please check your credit report. You can get your credit report free once a year, and like I said, spread it every 4 months, one from each of the credit bureaus each 4 months, and that way you can monitor your credit on an annual basis and not have to pay a credit monitoring service. And if you feel you've been a victim, get it documented, get that log, get a complaint file with the FTC. Also, make sure you file a police report, because that's going to make it a lot easier to make sure that you are reporting the identity theft and that you have been a victim. And a lot of credit card companies and a lot of financial institutions will require that documentation in order to remove a lot of those unauthorized charges. So as long as you see, as soon as you see some suspicious activity, make sure you take care of it fast, because if you let it grow, it's not going to go away. It's just going to become harder to fix. Well, I hope this was useful information to you. Please let me know, send me an email, and let me know about future topics you would like to hear on the show, and we'll see you next time on another episode of Making Sense.